Good day, everyone. Today we're going to be taking a look at this thing called action potential. If you don't know what that is or why you're here, me neither. Anyways, to make a long story short, this is basically how the body actually starts to signal muscle contractions. Okay, so the first things first, we actually have to take a look at the human brain. So if we look at this, it's all, mushy and gross. And yeah, I'm getting hungry too, but what is it made up of? Well, it's made up of brain cells, as you probably know. These little joints contain many little parts, as I'll show here. Um, out of all these annoying things, we are going to focus on just a few of them, which are the dendrites, cell body, the axon, and the axon terminals. As for that makes up the entire brain cell, really. We don't need to focus on like this whole overall picture too much, other than that dendrites do take in this information, passes it through the axon to the axon terminals to send it to another brain cell, and like a terrible form of a booty call. I mean, when we line up a bunch of these brain cells together and they clump up, this is also what makes up our nerves. Now, if we actually zoom into this chunky body right here, comprised of mostly nothing but fats and proteins, we'll kind of notice that there are a couple of ions here being represented inside and outside the cell. And so, what we're going to actually really be focusing on here is the potassium and sodium. As for their concentration, is very much inconsistent whether it's inside or outside of the cell, which are actually really important towards like whether the cell is resting or firing an action potential. So for our sodium and potassium ions, or like a tweaker with a brick of cocaine, really, like they're positively charged. And that's important that they're both positively charged. There are more sodium outside of the cell wall than on the inside, while potassium has more on the inside while less on the outside. This is what we're going to refer to as the chemical gradient. There are more positively charged ions on the outside of the cell, creating what we'll refer to as the electrical gradient. These together will create the electrochemical gradient. According to a Harvard program, the resting charge of this brain cell is negative 70 millivolts, which is saying on the inside there is negative 70 less charged ions on the inside rather than on the outside. Although it's technically less charged on the inside in their own rights and their own containment, they are net neutral. Next, we're going to focus on the actual movement of this electrochemical gradient. To do this, we are using proteins. These proteins known as protein channel gates. There are many different types of protein channels, but for simplicity between me and you, we are going to focus on what we're actually going to be discussing, which will be voltage gated sodium and potassium channels, because they only allow for one specific ion to pass through them. So we actually need a specific protein for each ion. So as these proteins open up, it allows for the potential to change inside the body as the ions move across the cell wall. Another protein channel we'll focus on too is the sodium potassium pump, which allows for movement of ions against the gradient, which means from low concentrations of potassium, we'll move those lower amounts to the higher amounts, working against the gradient. This will actually be done through a thing called ATP hydrolysis, causing this protein channel to move almost like a kid on a seesaw to allow three sodium ions to leave and have two potassium enter, causing the overall voltage of the inside of the cell to go down. It may also do it in reverse to allow the ions if the voltage gets too low. For those who may not know quite as much about ATP and hydrolysis, I'll be making a video explaining and going over that in a detailed version. But for summary, ATP is just a main source of energy used by the body. So, anyways, this ion pump does actually equate for 20 to 40% of the total brain's energy use. Um, but once the concentration of the cell does reach negative 55 millivolts or higher, it causes the body to send a signal down the axon. Now, once the cell reaches our desired result, and the protein channel for the sodium voltage gate actually opens up, which allows a bunch of sodium to start entering the cell body, creating a process called depolarization, because it's increasing the amount of positive ions within the cell, increasing the millivolts to a positive 30. The sodium channel will now inactivate itself after reaching this voltage, but it's not closing, so this keeps it from letting more sodium in, but without sending in more action potential signals. So it only sends one. But because of this change in millivolts, it also causes the potassium channel to open up. It's kind of a slow opening, but it opens up and allows a bunch of potassium to come in, or it actually has potassium going out, causing the cell to repolarize and drop its millivoltage. So when we are doing this because we actually want to get more sodium on the inside and throw that potassium out to kind of reach back to our original state where we started. Um, this process is called repolarization. Now, because the potassium channel is slower, it does make us overshoot getting back to our original voltage, so we end up a little bit more negative than the negative 70 millivolts we started out with. But because we have the sodium-potassium channel working against the gradient, like we previously mentioned, it allows us to work ourselves back up to the negative 70 resting. So as the body reaches that peak of voltage, that's it sending out the action potential. And it was sending it through the axon to the axon terminals. And that's how our body actually creates action potential. Now, there's a lot of things you can do to support this within the body, and it does really come down to your diet and making sure you have a healthy balance of sodium and potassium, and tracking how much you intake in your daily lives if you don't already. So, a lot of people that might be watching this may be someone who is actively going to the gym, and a lot of times you'll see on like Instagram or something these videos talking about how you might use salt in your pre-workout if it's not already in there, or you might see the honey and salt trick. This is kind of the standpoint that they're coming up. They're trying to support the idea of action potential and allowing it to help replenish it, because as sometimes when you take like CNS stimulants or central nervous system, it kind of can flush out these ions. So, like CNS stimulants like caffeine, or if you're really extreme, like DMAAs or DMHAs. These, so it's always important to replenish these before and even after the workout to make sure you have a healthy balance, and also just overall can get the best strength output for what you're putting in. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you learned something, maybe you consider leaving a like or subscribe. It would be greatly appreciated. If not, that's cool too. See you in the next one.